Hi, I'm Gwani, and we're going to talk about modernism. Modernism is an artistic and cultural movement that flourished in the first decades of the 20th century, about the time of World War I. Modernism is a cultural trend. It is a movement in the visual arts, music, literature, and drama, which rejected the old Victorian standards of how art should be made. Modernism was developed in the first 3 decades of the 20th century. It was developed in Europe, especially in Great Britain. Modernism is a philosophical movement that, along with the cultural trends and changes, arose with enormous transformations in Western society during the late 19th century and the early 20th centuries. Among the factors that shaped modernism were the development of modern industrial societies and the rapid growth of cities, followed by the horrors of the World War I. Modernism was essentially built on a utopian vision of human life and society and a belief in progress or moving forward. It assumed that certain ultimate universal principalities or truths, such as those formulated by religion or science, could be used to understand or explain reality.
Modernism refers to a global movement in society and culture that from the early decades of 20th century sought a new alignment with the experience and values of modern industrial life. Modernism has also been driven by various social and political agendas. Modernism was essentially based on a utopian vision of human life and society in a belief in progress, or moving forward. Modernist ideals pervaded art, architecture, literature, religious faith, philosophy, social organization, activities of daily life, and even the sciences.
And now, let's proceed to the famous authors in modernism literature. First, T.S. Eliot, or in full, Thomas Stearns Eliot O.M. was a poet, essayist, publisher, playwright, literary critic, and editor. Considered one of the 20th century's major poets, he is a central figure in English language modernist poetry. Robert Frost, in full, Robert Lee Frost, born on March 26, 1874, in San Francisco, California, U.S., died on January 29, 1863, in Boston, Massachusetts. He is an American poet who was much admired for his depictions of the rural life of New England, his command of American colloquial speech, and his realistic verse portraying ordinary people in everyday situations. Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound is widely considered one of the most influential poets of the 20th century. His contributions to modernist poetry were enormous. He was an early champion of a number of avant-garde and modernist poets, developed important channels of intellectual and aesthetic exchange between the United States and Europe, and contributed to important literary movements such as Imagism and Vorticism. Next, these are the authors that are best known in short stories and novels. First, James Joyce, or James Augustine Aloysius Joyce, was an Irish novelist, short story writer, poet, teacher, and literary critic. He contributed to the modernist avant-garde movement and is regarded as one of the most influential and important writers of the 20th. William Faulkner is widely regarded as one of the greatest writers of the 20th century. He is remembered for his pioneering use of stream of consciousness technique as well as the range and depth of his characterization. In 1949, Faulkner won the Nobel Prize for Literature. and D.H. Lawrence, or David Herbert Lawrence, is regarded as one of the most influential writers of the 20th century. He published many novels and poetry volumes during his lifetime, including Sons and Lovers and Woman in Love, but is best known for his infamous Lady Chatterley's Lover.
If we have famous authors, we also feature famous work during Modernism period. One of the most famous modernist literature is a novella entitled Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. Type of work is novella and first published serially in Blackwood's magazine in 1899 and again was published in 1902 as a third work in anthology Youth by Joseph Conrad, setting art on the deck of the Nile and the Congo River. And the theme of the story are colonialism, racism, savagery, and versus civilization. With a movie version, Apocalypse Now, 1979. The story begins with a group of friends that is waiting on the yacht for the tide to change on the River Thames so that they can head out of the sea. One of them, a storyteller who is Marlowe, that tells England is one of the darkest places in Earth. Marlowe's story begins in what he calls the sepulchral city somewhere in Europe. There, the company, the unnamed organization running a colonial enterprise in Belgian Congo, appoints him to be a captain of a river steamer. He sets out for Africa optimistic of what he will find. But his expectations are quickly soured. From the moment he arrives, he is exposed to the evil of imperialism, witnessing the violence it inflicts upon the African people it exploits. As he proceeds, he begins to hear tell of a man named Kurtz, a colonial agent who is supposedly unmatched in his ability to procure ivory from the continent's interior. According to rumor, Kurtz has fallen ill and perhaps mad as well, thereby jeopardizing the company's entire venture in the Congo. Marlowe is given command of his steamer and a crew of Europeans and Africans to man it, the latter of whom Conrad shamelessly stereotypes as cannibals. As he penetrates deeper into the jungle, it becomes clear that his surroundings are impacting him psychologically. His journey is not only into a geographical heart of darkness, but into his psychic interior, and perhaps into the darkening psychic interior of Western civilization as well. After encountering many obstacles along the way, Marlowe's steamer finally makes it to Kurtz. Kurtz has taken command over a tribe of natives who he now employs to conduct raids on the surrounding regions. The man is clearly ill, physically and psychologically. Marlowe has to threaten him to go along with them. So intent is Kurtz on executing his immense plans. As the steamer turns back the way it came, Marlowe crews fires upon the group of indigenous people previously under Kurtz's sway, which includes a queen figure described by Conrad which mocked eroticism and as exoticism. Kurt dies on the journey back up to the river, but not revealing to Marlowe the terrifying glimpse of the human evil he'd been exposed to. The horror! The horror! He tells Marlowe before dying. Marlowe almost dies as well, but he makes it back to the sepulchral city to recuperate. He is disdainful of the petty tribulations of Western civilizations that seem to occupy everyone around him. As he heals, he is visited by various characters from Kurt's former life, the life he led before finding the dark interior of himself in Africa. A year after his return to Europe, Marlowe pays Kurt's partner a visit. She is represented as several of Heart of Darkness' female characters are as naively sheltered from the awfulness of the world, a state that Marlowe hopes to preserve. When she asks about Kurt's final words, Marlowe lies. Your name, he tells her. Marlowe's story ends there. Heart of Darkness itself ends as the narrator, one of Marlowe's audience, see a mass of brooding clouds gathering on the horizon, what seems to him to be part of an immense darkness.